Hello and welcome to Chat GCP, a medical science, clinical research and commercialization podcast, and I'm your host, Charles Beasley. On today's episode, we have Julie Jones, the CEO and founder of BioValeo, a contract research organization specializing in CAR T-cell therapies and other precision medicine interventions. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you, Charles. Nice to be here today.
You flew up from Wellington today. How was the flight?
Pretty good, luckily.
Yeah. Nice, not too much wind?
No, the weather's perfect today, so it's a really nice day to fly up.
Excellent. Now tell me, is the coffee really better in Wellington versus
Yes,
Auckland?
obviously.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So Wellington's trying to be like the New Zealand version of Melbourne?
I think it's always been the best place for coffee in New Zealand.
Good. All right, so obviously I'm very excited for this conversation because I'm very passionate about clinical research. You've started and you're the CEO of BioValeo, a CRO. Very exciting stuff, very specialized. Whenever I talk to someone who works in clinical research, I'm always quite surprised that the journey into clinical research is very atypical for everyone, essentially. Hardly it seems that we enter the industry deliberately. So what was your foray? How did you fall into this industry?
The same way as everybody else, by accident.
Yep.
I was writing up my master's and I was running out of money a bit, and I thought, I'll look for a job. So I looked in the yellow pages, when we were talking a while ago, for a scientific research institute, and I found the Mulligan, and I thought, that looks good, so I'll ring them. So I rang them, and they had one job, and I said, great, I'll apply for that. And they said, have you got the job description? I said, oh, no, it doesn't matter, I'll just apply for it. So anyway, they sent me the job description, and it was like it was written for me. So it just all worked out, and that was the beginning of everything, I guess, for me.
Yeah, fantastic. So. Did the job line up with your master's? Was there a crossover in interest there?
Yeah, very much so. It was it was vaccine work for dendritic cell culturing for oncology studies. Mm-hmm. And it was working with cell cultures, and that's what I was doing with my master's as well. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you were more of a research scientist at that point at the Mulligan?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
So I came into, I suppose, by accident, doing lab research, and then I became a clinical researcher. So moving into just running the studies. Yeah.
So the project management side of things, the monitoring, or the mainstay of.
Well, I kind of skipped the monitoring stage, actually.
Oh, lucky you!
I know.
Gosh. For those that are listening, if you're in clinical research, typically you've done a few years at a minimum of monitoring, which is a lot of travel and a lot of nitty-gritty checking data. So you skipped that. Well done.
Yep, managed to skip that. So because of the stuff I was doing, more complex sort of clinical trial management at the Mulligan, I went straight into project management in the UK.
Oh, fantastic. So skip to the other side of the world. Yeah, got your cut your teeth on the project management in the UK. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I first started with Sanofi Aventis, and then I went to Bristol Myers Squibb, and then Biogen IDEC, and sort of did UK and then European, and then sort of portfolio management work over there.
Awesome. And you would have brought all of that expertise back to New Zealand and blessed us with all of that experience. Yeah.
Yep.
And you spent a lot of time, I know you're the previous president of New Zealand ACRES, so Association of Clinical Research. So how did the industry change during that time of yourself as president, or what big changes, if any, really took place?
Well, there were quite a lot of big changes, especially things that needed to occur. Mm-hmm. The association, when I started, actually was floundering a little. And at the time, Richard Stubbs was the president when I started, and I was the secretary for about 3.5 years before I became the president. And we really worked hard to lift the, lift NZACRES and build the membership. Mm-hmm. And one thing we needed to do is change the website because it was very outdated. Yeah. And we couldn't actually make any changes on our website. We couldn't keep the information up to date. So that was a 2-step process that I started once I was the president, I think. So created the new website, and then the second stage was creating the membership parts so that people could control their own data within the website, and they could access things just for members. Mm-hmm. And we've got videos and information on there. So
Yeah.
we've been very active, especially with government advocacy and other things as well. So
Yeah, I did see that the current president, Megan McElwain, was obviously heavily involved in the consultation around the Therapeutic Products Bill. Well,
yes, yeah. And
no,
we
Act.
also were involved with the ACC bill.
Yeah.
We've been trying very hard to get all trials covered by ACC for many, many years. So
Yeah.
that's an ongoing project.
Yeah, I mean, the job is never done, right? The technology changes, the need changes. We need to constantly reinvent ourselves to make sure that we keep up with the times and advocate for patients to have access to clinical trials.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to the current role that you have now as the CEO and founder of BioValeo. So this is very much a bespoke CRO. Obviously, there are a number of CROs that work across New Zealand, but BioValeo is unique in that it is providing very specific support and services to specific trials, correct?
That's our main purpose.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we are working within the personalised medicine space, so also known as precision medicine.
Yep.
But another area that we work on is supporting New Zealand biotech organisations.
Mhm.
So they don't have to be cell or gene therapy or precision medicine. They just have a need and we try and help them, basically. There's quite a gap there for smaller groups that just don't have any knowledge about what they need to be thinking about to get their product into trial and then get it into market. So we try and help them along there as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have homegrown knowledge and expertise that can be imparted back to the homegrown companies that are going to drive this economy forward. The biotech companies, high-value industries, we need that support. We need a dialogue, conversation. It's the industry that we work in is very high frequency. It's very nitty-gritty. It's kind of siloed, and it would be great if we had more dialogue, but also support domestically as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of amazing research and some products coming out of New Zealand that could be high impact and high value for the New Zealand economy as well. But I mean, if you haven't done clinical trials before, they're just so complicated, and people underestimate the complexity of actually running a trial and knowing what to do for those trials.
Absolutely. So what kind of services are you offering to, let's start with international clients to begin with, yeah.
So for our first year, we were mostly focused on offering New Zealand as a location to run clinical trials. So we have a lot of established relationships with our investigators, and we know all the vendors and the sites, and all of those. Even though our company's new, we're not. So we're very knowledgeable about the New Zealand environment and the different investigators, and what can be done at different sites.
The industry is so small, isn't it, that after a few years operating, everyone knows you. And
oh yes, very small. Yep. So, which is both a good and a bad thing, but it is a good thing actually.
Yeah. Keeps people honest.
Yeah, and you've got direct lines of communication rather than having to go through 6 people to get an answer for something. You can go directly to the source most of the time. Yep. So we were offering a specialised niche sort of a service that we will adapt to whatever the client needs. A lot of our clients are, they might be international, but some of them are smaller biotech as well. So they need more support. They perhaps don't have their own systems. They don't have really anything in place. And some of them need help just with the design and what they want to do. So advising them in that space as well as to what would work and what wouldn't work. So we can offer a full service, or we can just offer parts of a service. We can offer just New Zealand as an add-on country to other clinical trials as well. Or we can just sort of help with consultation to help them work out what it is they need in the future as well.
Excellent. And the types of studies that these biotechs would be doing, they're typically a bit more complex than your typical, say, small molecule study, where it's manufactured overseas, it just gets shipped in, a willing and eligible patient gets administered that drug. These kind of things, cell and gene, are a bit more complex than that, right?
If you're looking at precision medicine, that's a whole different level of complexity again. So that is our specialty area, really, is to do the complex type, studies. Yep. So we focus on the precision medicine and the immunology type of trials. I mean, for the most part, precision medicine does involve immunology, so they're very complementary. If you are going to run a clinical trial with, personalised medicine, the logistics around it are extremely complicated and nuanced, and you've got to be really flexible and adaptive to the needs of the study as well. And you really need to understand all of the requirements and work closely with the sponsors and the manufacturers and the shippers and the sites and the patients. It's not just a cookie cutter. It's not, you can't just, pull something off the shelf and there it is for a patient. It's usually one chance to get that right.
Yeah, so we have a depot in Australia, we'll ship drug off to you and then away you are laughing. It's I think CAR T-cell therapy trials, they really illustrate this point very nicely, where you are extracting blood from a willing patient, you're separating out the T-cells, you're genetically modifying them, which to a lot of people sounds crazy, very sci-fi, but it's more or less run-of-the-mill nowadays. And then you're growing them up in the lab, and then there's so many additional steps just to go back into the patient.
Yeah, so personalised medicine is also referred to as precision medicine, and that's because what you're basically doing is creating a precision therapy. So as you said, you're manipulating the cells. So you can take the cells out of the patient or a donor patient. So it's autologous if it's from the patient, or allogeneic if it's from a donor patient. And then you manipulate them in the lab, as you're saying, usually with a lentiviral vector. So you're inserting a construct into those cells, and then you give that back to the patient. So the precision part is where that construct is being inserted and what that construct does. So it's recognising certain things on, say, for example, in cancer, particularly, leukemias and lymphomas are very, they're popular in this space because they're easy targets with a CD19. And then you give that back to the patient, and it's usually, autologous, made out of their own cells. So you would expect that they're getting a very personalised response. Their own immune system is going to respond to those cells that are given back and stimulate an immune response that will hopefully clear the cancer.
Oh, it's amazing. It almost sounds, science fiction becoming science fact.
Oh, it gets even more complicated than that, to be honest, because, so I'll give you the 4 different terms we tend to use. So we've got personalised medicine, which we've sort of explained, but personalised medicine also covers things like even just testing, like diagnostic testing, say for breast cancer, where you're doing Herceptin, you're giving them Herceptin, so you're checking for the HER2 marker. Like that's a part of personalised medicine, because you're actually modifying the treatment you're going to give to patients based on their own genetics or the biomarkers they're expressing. So personalised medicine is very broad. And then you've got precision medicine, which kind of comes down a little bit into, precisely what are you doing for those patients in some ways. And then you've got what the Europeans are ATMPs, so Advanced Therapeutic Medicinal Products. So they come into 3 main buckets. So there's the gene therapy, and then there's cell therapy, and then there's tissue therapy. So, that might be generating tissues and things and giving them back to the patients. And then that also, there's another sort of a class of what we call regenerative medicine, and that is working with trying to get your body to heal itself in ways that, I guess they're modified or adapted using different techniques. So this is really going to the sci-fi stuff, like growing organs or growing bone and things in the labs and then putting it back into people. So that's what, they're working on that space at the moment, using nanotechnology. And, there's so much amazing science out there now, and it's really all starting to come out. We're not 100% there, but we're working towards it. So I think the future's looking pretty exciting.
You can't understate the potential, but also the time horizons that we have to deal with. Blockbuster drugs from the last decade, they started development in the 90s or the early 2000s. So the stuff that's starting now will really see the benefit of not tomorrow, not next year, but in a number of years' time, and that would become ideally, hopefully speaking, the mainstay and the standard of care in some of these potential avenues.
Yeah, if you can get better therapeutic outcomes from a more personalised treatment, that's really the goal. To have people recover from the genetic illnesses, rare diseases, or from cancers, or various other things. After an accident, you could, heal things differently to the way we've done it before. So all of these sort of groups, they come under personalised medicine.
It's amazing. I find it's so in stark contrast to what we've been doing for the last 50 years, 70 years, 100 years in the healthcare system, which is kind of, we've got these very blunt force, brute force interventions that we can kind of apply to more or less every patient. You've got a disease, we'll give you this because that's what we have. Whereas now, precision, personalized, it's down to like an N as small of one, an N of one potentially.
Yeah.
But with that, you kind of invert the triangle that you have instead of let me try to describe this. So instead of having an N of say 1,000, but you have you can kind of pass out the complexity of the supply chain and everything across all those people. You've got an N of 1, so you've got an intense amount of complexity, and with that will come expense, right?
Well, that is one of the problems we face at the moment, or challenges really. The cost of each treatment is significant, and there are ways that we can reduce that over time. Yeah. The more you produce, obviously, the cheaper it becomes. Mm-hmm. So that's also part of the issue, is that we're at the moment just producing quite low numbers of these treatments. And especially during trial, you're only doing 12, 20 in your phase 1 patients, 12 to 20 patients phase 1. And then you get into phase 2, you might be doing 80 to 200 patients, depending on what you're doing. The cost per patient is high, mostly because all the science behind it is expensive. So, if you're producing a lentivirus to be able to transfect your T cells in the manufacturing of the CAR T cells, lentiviral production is expensive, CAR T cell production is expensive, and then running a clinical trial is expensive. And at the moment, we're also working on ensuring that the safety profiles are the best that they can be. So a lot of patients are there for inpatient stays as well during a clinical trial, which also drives up the cost and also the burden on the healthcare system for now. Yep. So it's a matter of working out the best efficacy for the product and the best safety profiles for the product, and how we're going to manage those and make sure patients actually have the best therapeutic product for themselves.
Yeah, I had a health economist on the podcast a few episodes ago, and it was really interesting hearing him talk about how when you look at the cost of a drug, it can be quite daunting when you see the ticket, the off-the-shelf price, and you go, oh my gosh, okay, per treatment that's $200,000, or some of these gene therapies that are available in the States, they, one time $1 million ticket. It's just quite amazing. But when you add in all the additional costs that would otherwise be incurred for that patient, it might be additional hospital stays or additional physiotherapy or anything, or the fact that they can't go back to work, for example, the costs do mount up and offset the fact of how expensive the treatment might be. So it's important to have a long-term healthcare system view of these kind of things. It's not just the political football, which is the cost of something. It's actually the 1,000-foot view. Yeah,
and that's definitely something everybody is thinking about, even during the development stage. So the regulators look at how these products are going to be delivered at the site. And there is a bit of a move, well, hopefully in the future, I think it's going to end up being a lot of on-site manufacturing. At the moment, you still need a GMP facility, which makes it expensive. And that may continue, but then as the turnover increases, that will bring down the cost per patient. A lot of the systems are becoming closed. So with the CAR T manufacturing, it's a closed system, so it's a lot easier and faster to manufacture, and you can also produce more for that patient.
So by closed in this case, it's just what plug in the inputs and away the machine goes and
it's not 100% closed. Okay. So we're still not 100%.
Do need some kind of human touch involved.
So it's a pod, basically. You can have these little pods that you can put the product into. So there's much less human touching involved, which makes it easier and safer to produce the product. So we can have an entirely closed system, then we can move away from having a GMP facility. But right now there's still sampling that's needed to be taken out and things like that. So you still need a clean room. So I think in the future we're going to have a whole lot of clean rooms all over different countries where they're manufacturing these products, and maybe it's out licensed to those hospitals to be able to manufacture. And then they can actually... It'll probably be a bit of a hub and spoke type model where you've got a central manufacturing, and it's close enough that you can either ship to the patients or they can come in to the main hospital to get a treatment. Because you won't be able to put a manufacturing unit in every single hospital around every country.
Sure.
So,
yeah, I can't imagine, say Harara in Taranaki would have a GMP level facility for this kind of thing. So there'd still be potential patients there. So it would be, the whole point of this is to have some level of equity, right? You can't just go, oh, you're in Auckland, lucky you have access to these newfangled treatments.
Yeah, that is a challenge. But the other benefit of doing these sorts of studies usually is it's often a one-hit wonder. Mm-hmm. You just actually have one treatment, and then you would normally have a couple of weeks to a month of quite intense follow-up just to make sure that your adverse event profile is, within the safety. So there are quite severe adverse events that can occur to people if they're not carefully managed and monitored. So cytokine release syndrome is one of them, and then neurological impact. So you just want to make sure the immune system is controlled sufficiently that there isn't damage to the body and that there is a neurological impact. So, they're getting very good at managing these side effects now. And actually most of the products that we're seeing coming through now, they easily managed as outpatients rather than inpatients. So that's looking good. So hopefully over time we can, get the time the patient's in the site down, and there are also digital sort of remote monitors for temperature and other things, so people will know if they're spiking a fever, they need to go to the hospital. Okay. So they don't have to necessarily be on site the whole time. So they might be able to travel for 2 or 3 hours.
Nice. And with each successive generation of these, CAR T, I think Malligan have their 3rd generation CAR T cell therapy. With each generation, it gets safer, more efficacious. That's the idea.
Yes.
Right?
And they're adding lots of different bits and bobs into them. So they have, for the efficacy, they're adding sort of co-stimulatory aspects to it. So it might help activate the immune system more effectively. It might mean that the T cells travel to a certain place, like maybe your lymph nodes, to be able to replicate. A lot of them are putting in a suicide gene, which basically means if your immune system is, or if you want to knock out that CAR, there's a particular product you can give them that will mean that the CARs all just are killed off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can control them if you are finding that the body is overreacting or there's a bad response.
An autoimmune response to the CAR. Oh, wow. That's amazing. So all of this really does illustrate the point that you need if there is a sponsor doing a trial or wants to do a trial in New Zealand on these next level complicated precision medicine and personalized medicine studies. They really need the support of someone like yourself and BioValeo to make this trial happen.
It's like I said, it's just not like a normal trial. It's not a cookie cutter. You need to really adapt and flex. And I don't necessarily think that all of the big CROs are able to do that. They have certain processes, certain systems that's what they use, whereas we're not offering that. We're offering, a tailored system and service, and we work very closely with the sponsors and all of the different parties. Especially manufacturing, because if you're not working with manufacturing, you don't know when the product's coming and going. You don't know how that product is, whether it's going to be manufactured. So a lot of the time the patients get a chemotherapy directly before they're given the CAR. But you don't want to give that if there's been a manufacturer failure. So you need to be sure that actually the product's going to be ready for the patient, because you can't usually give it twice.
I see. Yeah. And that kind of segues nicely into the topic of discussion, which is the other companies that have been recently established within the kind of ecosystem that BioValeo operates, being so BioVeros and Bio Ora, all of whom come under a nice little banner of support and venture capitalist investment from Bridgewest Ventures, right?
Yeah, so we've got this little circle of... you can go to, you can get your plasmid made over in Australia at Biocena, and then you can get your lentivirus made at BioVeros, and then you can get the CAR Ts made at Bio Ora, and then you can run a study through us. And then you can go back to Bio Ora for your commercial manufacturing. So it's that end-to-end loop. If somebody wanted to come with their construct and they wanted to go into a trial and then into commercial manufacturing, they could do the entire thing in New Zealand.
much more efficient than saying it was just BioValeo and we had to find some other partners locally or regionally to do the other steps.
No, and also with a lot of the trials, we probably would be needing to have multiple manufacturing sites.
Mm-hmm.
So, say Bio Ora would partner potentially with other manufacturing sites in other countries so that we can offer it here rather than patients having to travel or the product being shipped too far.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's also something we'll see a lot more of going forward, that there'll be manufacturing sites and they will partner with other sites and they'll do tech transfer and then they'll all just be able to produce the same product for trials or for commercial use.
That's amazing. And how did this idea come about? So you're the founder and CEO of BioValeo. Did you chat with the CEO of BioValeo before it was a thing? How did the genesis of this just come about? Did it?
Yeah, it just came about. Yeah, I think because Bridgewest had the other companies in the string. I mean, they've actually also got a CAR T cell construct company, so Bio42. So they've got the full chain, and they were sort of noising around looking for maybe we want to do a CRO to see, to have somebody run our trials, and it's all about timing, isn't it? So it just seemed like the right time and the right place for me to do it, and I think I felt comfortable with the experience I've had. I mean, it's always a bit daunting doing these things, but I think I'm at the stage now where I've got a good 20 years behind me. So
put that on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, and I understand the environment very well, and it brought it all back full circle for me. I mean, right back to my degree was biochemistry, genetics, and cell biology. So, and I have always loved that vaccine development space. And I worked with the Allergan to start with, and I actually sort of helped them with some of the design of their phase 1 CAR T cell study. And then I've been working, in the New Zealand regulatory environment for some time. I've done quality management, I've done all the project management. I mean, my biggest gap was monitoring, but I extremely successfully filled that with Ruth Lucas, who is joined from the beginning. And I mean, I'm very pleased to have her on board because she's an amazing monitor with so much experience, and she's really helped set up the company as well. So
that's so good. And what's next on the cards for BioValeo then? Are you still in the setup phase of the company?
Well, we are, but we are and we're not.
Yeah.
So we're setting up, and I mean, when you're setting up a CRO, you've got a lot to do.
Yeah.
We spent the first 6 months really focusing on all the different systems that are available. So over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of change in the industry, especially with COVID and everything going digital. So we assessed all the different systems that were out there. Well, not all of them, but the ones we thought were worth assessing. And we looked at what their capabilities were and usability and price, among other things. So we wanted to offer our clients different types of systems. So we have assessed really all singing, all dancing, higher level systems that we could offer to a deeper pocketed client. And then we've also got some systems that are actually pretty good for the money, and they can be used for smaller biotech groups that are really just trying to get their product through a phase 1, early phase sort of discovery, to try and then raise more money in the future. So we can offer different things, which is nice. So there was a lot of review of systems, and then the other thing you need is an awful lot of documentation.
How many SOPs do we have now?
Too many. So we've actually got a lot of them. They're all just stacked up, waiting in draft, because the other thing is once you roll out an SOP, you link it into all the other SOPs. So it's kind of easier to write them all, put them in draft, and then you start coding them all up, and then you can put on the reference and supporting documentation onto those. So that's a never-ending job. Always adding extra SOPs and guidances and things as you go. So we've been writing a lot of that, and then because we're a new company, we've also had to work on all of our costing and budgets and timelines and contracts and all those back-end business things that you don't really think about too hard when you're doing clinical trials, but when you're starting a company, you need to actually put that in place as well. So lots of documentation, and then also a lot of reviewing of the regulations internationally, in New Zealand. So what the FDA is doing, what the EMA is doing, what Australia is doing, what New Zealand's doing, particularly in this space, and making sure that we understand that well and that we have tables and guidances in place for our clients.
Yeah.
So,
in terms of the regulatory aspect, New Zealand is often viewed in this space, so the GM, anything to do with GM, as being highly complex, and that would also lead into the need for having someone that is very well experienced in submitting those applications to the regulatory authority and the ethics committees.
Yes.
So, where was I going with that? Yeah, it's very complex. And how is it changing now with this Therapeutic Products Bill, which is now the Act?
That's
right?
a good question because we don't know the answer to that yet.
Okay.
So
remains to be seen.
Yeah. Ethics is not going to change terribly much at this stage, but I did used to sit on the ethics committee as well, so that I have a good understanding of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot involved in the TPB. We did need it. We were so far behind where everybody else is that we absolutely needed to have a change. They are going to be putting a lot of information in the guidance documents, and those have not been written yet. So what it looks like at the end is going to depend a lot on what's on those guidance documents. There's also a consultation at the moment for the HASNO Act, because they want to change the HASNO as the hazardous substances and new organisms. I always want to say genetically modified. New organisms, so trying to make it easier to do research and to bring medicines in that are GMOs. So there will be some changes in that space as well, I believe, in the near future, which will make it easier to bring in clinical trials and genetically modified organisms because the CAR T cell is actually a GMO.
Yep.
But if you gave somebody a gene therapy, that's not a GMO. Interesting.
The person is a GMO?
No, a person can't be a GMO.
Oh, that's right, of course.
If you gave it to an animal, you've got a GMO.
Well, hang on. David Downs likes to talk about himself as being New Zealand's most famous genetically modified human, but
yes. So, but
his T cells are genetically modified. Not all of him.
So, he is a GMO, but we don't class him as a GMO under the HASNO Act. So. So it'll make life easier, I think, bringing in those types of trials.
Yeah, and it'll start stratifying people into how modified you are in the near future.
Well, we might all be a little bit modified. We've been doing a lot of work with, as I said, the setup, and then there's always, when you also have a new company, there's business development stuff that you do the whole time, trying to make sure that when you're set up, you actually have that work coming in. So it's a chicken and egg. You're trying to get everything set up, but you need to have something to do once you're there. That's quite a time sink for the most part. Yeah. But we actually have several studies now coming through, not just in cell and gene, but just oncology and ophthalmology and a whole lot of other things. So we are most of those are New Zealand companies, but one of them is actually an American smaller biotech group that's doing nanotechnology, which is quite exciting. So
awesome.
That's also really interesting. And we weren't planning on it, but we are now expanding directly to Australia.
Great.
Just this month we have been looking at that because a lot of our clients want to run studies into New Zealand and Australia. So we were going to wait a little bit longer, but we're not going to now. We're going to
the needs
expand.
there. The demand's there.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that's fantastic. So will that be in partnership as well with, I presume, Bridge West and the other parts in the companies in the circle, or will there be Australian-based partners as well as part of this ecosystem?
The others will, I think, over time expand as well. So I know BioValeo, it'll be a little bit harder for them to expand. Well, they probably don't need to really. They're setting up their facilities here. Yeah. Bio Ora will probably need to expand in the future as well for manufacturing. But they're, again, just setting up their facilities here in the meantime. And we have some partnerships with some other CROs as well to help support on staffing, depending on, if we get too much work, then we'll use some of their staff, and if they have too much work, then they'll use some of our staff. So that helps while you're growing as well to have some partnerships with other smaller CROs.
Yeah, absolutely. New Zealand is small, but Australia, in terms of the industry, is also very small. After a little bit, not very small, I think that's probably an overstatement, but yeah, you can very quickly develop a very good network of people and know a lot of people very, very fast.
Yeah.
for you, the transition from someone that works in project management, program management, quality management, working or running NZ Acres, what was that transition like into a CEO, founder role like for you?
I should probably say it's a big change, but I don't feel it's that different in a lot of ways.
Same mission, essentially.
Yeah, I think so. I'm still doing what I love.
Yep.
It doesn't feel like a real job. I don't ever, wake
That's
up in the
good.
morning and not want to get out of bed. So, I mean, I once I discovered clinical trials, that was me.
Yep.
Like, I loved it. I still love it. So, and I do enjoy doing the more complex things. I like having independence as well, to be able to choose and direct the company. So, I mean, that's something that's really, it's exciting and amazing for me to be able to do that, to actually start it up from scratch and mould it into something that we believe in, really. So that's where we're going.
Yep.
Yeah.
Amazing. And has there been any big lessons that you've learnt along the way in the role of CEO that maybe were new?
I think probably hire well early is important.
Yeah. Release some of the control to well-trained.
Well, if you hire well
people.
early, you don't need to, you don't need to control much people. You've hired people that are adding value from the beginning, and that's really helpful. Because one thing I just couldn't do right now is, have to spend a lot of oversight time with employees because I just have so much other stuff going on. It's difficult to focus sometimes because you're pulled in many different directions. And it's, you prioritise. And what I'm doing today might be very different to what I'm going to do later today or this evening or tomorrow.
Do you mean you're not on another podcast right after this one?
No, this is my only podcast today. So, but, every day is a bit different. But at the same time, we've got our sort of short-term goals and our long-term goals, and we've got sort of different activities that we're working on. But, I guess, just do it. I think you just got to get on with it and do it, and it'd probably be quite easy not to do it and to be intimidated by it, but you just take each day at a time, and you find that over time you actually take it through, and kind of got to get the bigger picture, thinking about where you're really going with this and what's important for your company and your clients as well.
I can imagine it would get it would be very easy to get stuck in the nitty-gritty, but I imagine you have to zoom out regularly to say, why are we doing this? What's the main goal? We're trying to make it possible to do this kind of research in New Zealand and reduce health inequities in New Zealand patients.
Yes, and the other problem I think probably at this stage of the company is that, Ruth and I, we have huge amounts of knowledge. That's why we're doing, we're in these positions. So we're trying to download that into the company without getting too tied up into being the only ones that will be able to do this. So, right now we're a high value, and we need to make sure that we can actually transfer that into future staff that will be high value as well. So, developing resources that our company and our staff will be able to support our clients going forward, rather than it just being on the two of us. If it's just us, then we're not going anywhere too fast. You're
so valuable that you're irreplaceable.
Well, yeah, slightly at the moment, and but we don't want to make that a long-term thing. So I guess it's making sure that there is capability for future growth, and that is making sure that we get the right staff. So we're very when we're hiring, we look at people's experience. They need to they need to know what they're doing. Like, we can't take on people who we have to hold their hand and teach them, because actually with complex clinical trials, people expect experience. We expect high quality and experience, and we're going to make sure that that's what we actually offer them. So.
Yeah. Because I think in the clinical research industry, the kind of typical career progression is maybe a little bit of site level exposure. So it might be a public hospital or a private research site. Maybe move into a study coordinator role, and then get the fortunate opportunity to become a CRA or a clinical trial assistant, and then get into the project management, and then maybe go into something more complex like this. Does that still track for this very, it's very unique industry as well? So unique.
It probably does,
industry.
actually, and I think I'm very unusual the way I've done it, coming from manufacturing, But now it's highly valuable because not many people understand the, personalised medicine manufacturing processes and how that's going to impact on the trials. So, it was a different route, definitely, to get to where I am, but now it's something that's fantastic for us. It really helps us. And there are always other gaps that, say, in your own career that, it's such a complex industry. People do data management, they do regulatory, they do ethics, they do, medical writing, and you can't know everything. And I think that's what people, the most dangerous people are the ones that do think they know everything.
Oh, yeah.
So, you've always got to be learning and trying to grow your skills. And it is really good to have a diverse understanding of the entire industry. Yep. But, maybe have more specialist knowledge in certain areas and then work with people that complement you and your gaps as well. So I think people's careers, yes, you don't try and jump up too fast too quickly because you need those years of experience and knowledge. And people that haven't had it, you can tell. So they don't know that everybody else can tell really, but all the people experienced can tell. But it's a very hard industry to teach. It comes through experience usually.
That's right. So it's not like we can, thinking 10 years ahead and invest all this money in maybe putting together a university course that really gears people towards precision and personalised medicine clinical research trials. Just wouldn't.
No, not so much. I mean, you can teach basic information, but actually it's very much... It's a funny industry because it's very black and white, but we work in the grey,
Oh, I like that.
Because we're working with people and, people's responses and, they didn't turn up to this or their results are off here or, there's so much that just varies, but we're trying to get it into the black and white, all the time. And we need it to be black and white because that's our data. Yep. But people are not black and white. So, and then we, particularly in the sort of personalised medicine space, you're working a lot more adaptively in the studies as well. So you don't necessarily want a study that's really set. You want to be able to potentially modify the protocol and modify processes based on what you're going to see coming through. So a lot of that is going to be experience as well. So the monitors and the project managers actually being able to detect when something is an issue and actually, is this something we should address now or early? So a lot of risk management and identification of that, and then being prepared to actually make a change as you need to as well, so that the study is as safe as it can be for the patients and that the product comes out at the end as actually being efficacious. You don't want to tank the product because you've not been prepared to make a change in the study.
Absolutely. And a lot of what project management and even being a monitor, being a CRA, a lot of what goes into that is actually thinking 3 months, 4 months, 5 months in advance. That's critical, because you have people that think of the here and now and that's it and aren't thinking about the potential avenues or the potential routes that the trial could take. They're missing out on a lot of risk management if they're not thinking about the future. Yeah, and
GCP has been very clear that they want a lot more risk and quality management focus in clinical trials. And, I mean, they're right, the whole quality by design, you should be bringing in prior knowledge from other studies, other experience, and that's something that we can offer, if we are specialised in this space, that we should have that experience to be able to bring to the next study and be able to advise our clients on how best to design it and how we can run these things in a more effective way. And, throughout the study, you should be doing risk-based monitoring. So you're adapting your monitoring depending on where the needs are and what's happening in the study. And, so much of this is also relationships. Like, you really want to work closely with your sites. Don't annoy them. Sometimes some of the requests that come through are a bit ridiculous. And, you've got to know when to push back and actually, no, we're not doing that. We're going to do it this way because this is how, the site will be able to deliver this. So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
you're not working against each other as the CRO and the site. You need to work collaboratively, and I think a lot of people miss out on that.
Oh, absolutely.
That sort of thing almost becomes like a combative relationship where the site's advocating for what's best in their needs and the CRO is just advocating for what the sponsor wants without filtering it through a lens of the importance of why we're doing this and how that relates to the site and maybe the local requirements and processes.
Oh, I just think the monitor should be there to help support the site, to help deliver the study the way...
Hang on, I thought they were there just to make sure that this data point matches that on the screen. No?
Well, a little bit as well. But, the study, if the site can't run the study properly and they need help or, things aren't working out, then, the monitor should really be there trying to work out how best to support the site to be able to deliver the study and how, what's happening with the patients. Is this actually the right study? Are the patients able to stay on the study? Is their safety profile, adequate? Because if the study doesn't run properly, then the sponsor's not going to be too happy about that.
Right.
And their product's not going to make it to market. So, it's a well-run study where the sites are engaged and they are happy with the study. Essentially will mean that the study is more successful and then hopefully the product does actually come through to market, well, if its efficacy is there. But... if the site doesn't want to run a study, it's not going to go very well.
Oh, that's right. You can't force them.
No.
I'm going to do this because I said so. And that really highlights the importance of having someone like BioValeo in the region, in the country, so available with these really highly complex studies that you can work really closely. It's not as though you've got some, CRO based in Europe or maybe, Australia's not that far away, but it can feel further away when there are a lot of questions to be raised.
The other thing is because the personalised medicine space is actually quite new. This is a huge field. There are 1,000 CAR T cell studies internationally at the moment. There are 400.
1,000?
There's 1,000.
Wow.
It's huge. There are a lot of studies run at the moment. About half of them are in China, and the other half. I'm going to say half in China, half in America, and the rest
And a couple of
elsewhere. And there are over 400 companies that are coming through with cell and gene therapies. So it's growing, and there's a big knowledge gap in the CRO space for how do you deal with these studies and what are the regulations that are going to apply that are going to differ. And then the investigators are not that experienced. The sites and investigators, it's new for them. They're not sure really what is this. They don't want to injure their patients.
Yeah.
They need to feel confident that by being involved in the study and offering this to their patients, that they're actually doing the right thing for their patients. So we work closely with them, and not just for startup, but during the study as well, supporting them and making sure everything's okay. Is everybody happy? Is everybody safe? Really throughout the study. So that is really important. Like, you have to make sure you support those investigators and those sites properly for precision medicine studies.
Yeah, and that would be self-propagating more or less. The more comfortable people are to run the studies at the site level, so those doctors you're talking about, the more comfortable they would be maybe, shall we say, evangelizing to their friends and colleagues and making available for the next layer of studies. And then it would become a bit more of a critical mass, so to speak. You've got to start somewhere, but you need to have a good result to keep propagating the
That's exactly
model.
right, yeah. So, we have the one study in New Zealand at the moment, the Maligan one, and then hopefully there'll be more, starting in the next year or so. So I think it is going to start slowly, and that's another reason why we're not just doing precision medicine stuff, because we need other studies as well. Because
want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Well, it's not that. It's just more that New Zealand environment is learning about these studies, and the hospitals can only do so many at a time at the moment. So that allows us to support the rest of the New Zealand biotech sector. But yes, it will become just a much bigger space going forward, and I think particularly even in the gene editing space, that's going to get bigger and bigger, and not necessarily in the hospitals. It could be more on the private sites. But as they get confidence, and as New Zealand's recognises, actually this is a great place to do this research. It's really high quality, and the patients are available and actually really eager to be on these types of trials. I think we'll get more studies coming through and more investigators wanting to participate.
Yeah. Because New Zealand has always been looked at as being fairly fast and good recruitment for per capita. But I suppose those two considerations go out the window when you're dealing with something so complex. It's not necessarily about how quickly can you get up and running, and how many patients per capita can you bring in. It's more about what is the quality and how seamless is it to run in partnership with you, your sites, and the doctors in the hospitals and all the other parts in the ecosystem.
Well, the other thing with these types of trials is the manufacturing. So, you might be able to bring in the patients, but if manufacturing can't produce the product, you're not bringing in the patients. So that has been a limiting step for a lot of CAR T cell studies in the past, and even just getting the lentivirus manufactured to be able to then do the CAR Ts has been a limiting step for the last 5 years.
Yep.
Things are catching up now. There's a lot more manufacturing available across the board. But you still, you need to have those facilities to be able to run the trials. But hopefully with, Bio Ora, we'll be able to do more of that as well. But yes, we have traditionally always been very fast at setting up. It's good because we've got, national templates for our contracts and our patient information sheets and, a whole lot of other information. So we're all familiar with the documents, and it's nice and quick and easy if you use those. And then, our regulatory process is fairly fast, generally. The EPA for GMOs has not been too fast, but, you can get it through. You just need to make sure you've given it the correct amount of time to be able to do that. But as I said, I think that will change going forward. And then, once we bring the patients in, the hospitals and the sites here, they do high quality research. And they usually deliver really well. So the data's clean and tidy and done in time. And, they have patients that are actually eligible for the study. They're good at recruiting the right patients. Yep. And patients in New Zealand are usually keen to participate. And we have quite a large pool of patients, actually. Despite our size, we have quite a reasonable pool because we're not saturated with trials. Yeah. So quite often there are, maybe more patients than there are trial spaces. In these types of studies, absolutely. We've got more patients waiting than we've got spaces on these trials.
Yeah. Is that just a lack of awareness amongst investigators or doctors or the general public that there are, there's an abundance of patients per trial, or is it just a limited number of trials that are coming here, do you think?
Oh, I think it's more the limited trials. People have been, a lot of people don't realise New Zealand's on the map. Did you know that? So a lot of international sponsors don't realise that New Zealand runs clinical trials. So
terrifying.
I know.
What, you exist?
Yeah, I know, yeah. Just that.
I thought you were, if they do know about us, they think we're part of Australia.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
and there's just one island, not two.
Yeah. So. But they, when we talk to people, they're amazed at actually the environment that is available here, and they're really keen to talk to us about, have you got patients in this area? I'm like, yeah, we've got lots of patients for that, and they want to discuss it further and see if they can get their studies in. So, the COVID caused a lot of problems internationally in New Zealand. Like many of the medical, sort of the health systems were struggling, and we were struggling. And we're now starting to recover a bit, and I think trials in the next year or two are going to really start taking off again, and we'll start seeing some really interesting things coming through for patients.
Oh, that's so good. Well, this has been super enlightening for me. Really excited for the future of BioValeo and the precision and personalised medicine space in New Zealand. I think we're kind of just catching on to that now, that this is going to be a big thing, but it also needs a very complex, so we need a whole lot of cooperation amongst different parties, which is makes it very interesting. So we really look forward to seeing what happens on the immediate horizon for yourself and all your collaborators. If people are interested, where can they go to find out more about yourself and BioValeo?
Well, we have a website, which is biovaleo.com.
Good start.
And we have a LinkedIn page as well, so you can find us on either of those.
Are you going to any symposiums or conferences soon? Obviously NZ Acres.
Yeah, we've got NZ Acres this week. We actually just got back from Perth from the International Society of Cellular Therapies conference, and we went to Boston Bio 2023 earlier this year.
Yep.
We go to a few. We're going to the New Zealand Society of Oncologists in September as well, and talk to some of the doctors there. So we'll do some more international. Probably a couple of international next year within this space, within the precision medicine space. But we like to support the New Zealand environment as well. So we help to try and sponsor the NZ Acres and the NZSO conferences and things. So.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to seeing what happens. Thanks so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing.
Welcome.
So, best of luck.